break through some of the habitual misunderstandings of the disciples. But this is the exception rather than the rule. We're trying to attract people by beauty and truth and higher knowledge. You know, we want to not to push people toward Krishna, because then we have to get farther away from Krishna to push them, see? But we want to pull people towards Krishna, which means we have to get closer to Krishna and then attract them. See, how do we attract them? By beauty. Everyone's attracted by beauty, isn't it? So these pastimes of the Lord, when He appears, they're all very, very beautiful. We, of course, went over the qualities of Krishna and how beautiful He is. Actually, the first quality and the last quality, the one, number 1 and number 64, are both similar. That He has this super excellent bodily beauty that is not visible in any other form or any other expansion of Godhead, what to speak of the living entities. His bodily form is so beautiful and so attractive that once you see it, it's just like becomes imprinted on your brain, and that's really all you can think of. So Krishna is very wonderfully beautiful, and when He dances and sings his original songs, all, you know, very entertaining and full of subtle puns, and I mean, there's nothing like Krishna. So we should also try to emulate this in our presentation and base our presentation on beautiful artistic values and like that. So that should be how we present teachings of Krishna and Lord Chaitanya as well. So I forget how I got on that subject, but oh well. Any more questions? Teo?
Where specifically can we read about Gopakumar?
Bṛhad-Bhāgavatamṛta.
And you
I would probably advise you not to read until you have read Srimad Bhagavatam.
Okay. And you mentioned at one point the demons that were defeated by Krishna fell down from liberation, from the impersonal Brahman realization, into the families of Brahmans. Now, were these Brahmans already corrupted or on their way to falling down, or how is it possible for demons to incarnate in Brahminic families?
That's a good question. They were not using Garbhadhan samskara, and because of that, the demons could take birth in those families and corrupt them.
Can you expand a little on Garbhadhan samskara?
Oh boy, I've talked about this so many times. Garbhadhan samskara, there are 7 samskaras in Vedic life, beginning with conception. Conception, and then birth, and then the naming ceremony, the first grains, the beginning of learning, marriage, sannyas, and the death ceremony and shraddha. Okay, these are the samskaras in Vedic life. And so Garbhadhan samskara is a regular festival like this, but the purpose of the festival is to get auspicious karma for begetting a child. See, so the married couple will consult with an astrologer. They'll find an auspicious day and time, and then they'll hold a Vaishnava festival. They'll invite the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. They'll chant and dance and distribute prasadam to everyone's full satisfaction, give charity to the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, and then at the appointed time they'll go in the marriage chamber and conceive the child. See, with the blessings of all the great souls. And this is how you get, oh, and of course they themselves would chant 64 rounds for several days or even weeks before the conception. This is how you get a first-class child. Otherwise, if there's any influence of the modes of ignorance or passion at the moment of conception, then the child will also be, to that degree, contaminated. And we see this today. This is called Varna Shankara. It means unwanted population. The couple's not really trying to create a child. They're just enjoying. They have no idea, no desire actually for child. So then child is created, that's called unwanted child, Varna Shankara. Actually, Shankara means ignorance.
Myths.
Hmm?
Myths, like born Shankar, born myths, like not pure word.
Well, that's another thing. Yeah, that also happens by this same token. That in the old days, the families would arrange the marriages so, you know, it's good breeding. I mean, it's just like, you know, I mean, I hate to say that, but it's not like we're into eugenics or anything like that. But let's say you're breeding dairy cows, right? So you want to unite the cow and the bull that have the best qualities for giving milk. You know, it's just kind of common sense, right? Similarly, the families in the past, they were either Brahminical or Kshatriya or Vaishya culture, and then they would try to arrange marriages with similar families with similar strong cultural background. The idea being that the offspring would also have those qualities. And then, of course, the families, you know, because in Vedic society, a marriage is not just between the husband and wife. It's almost like a merger of the two families, you know. So it's a big deal, and lots of people have to be involved in the negotiations. And if the elders of the family have spiritual knowledge, then, of course, what they're going to recommend is that the family of the bride or groom is going to be of the same varna, of the same quality. Don't fix that now. Wait till later. It's not going anywhere. Unless they sit against it anyway. Don't sit against it. That's what pulled it down. Yeah. Get away from that. Yeah. Get well away from it. Okay. So the families in those days would arrange marriages according to the best interests of everyone. See, now the marriages are just between the couple themselves, and sometimes they'll even run off, you know, and elope and get married independently without anybody's permission. And so what this does is it simply fosters or encourages the creation of low-class children. So that you see the children, they're not austere, they're not sober, they're not grave, they don't have any discipline, they're very difficult to manage, they develop bad habits very quickly, they're frivolous, they're, you know, I mean, I hated these kind of kids when I was growing up. When I was a kid, I was like very serious. I was like, you know, sober. And my parents told me about one incident, which I sort of dimly remember. I was about 5 years old, and we were Christmas shopping. And we were in some store, I think it was Woolworth's in Hackensack. And there was some kid, like, throwing a complete temper tantrum because his parents wouldn't buy him a certain toy. And he was like literally rolling on the ground, banging with his fists, and screaming at the top of his lungs that he wanted this toy. And my parents said, I looked at this kid with this look of like such disgust. Because I would never do something like that. You know, even at that age, the tendencies, the emotional tendencies are very much obvious, even in children of young age. Who is sober and who is not, who is intelligent and who is not. So the modes of material nature of the body are what determine the character in the long run, right? And yes, by different culture and training, you can more or less, you know, put a better finish on those qualities, but the fundamental qualities of that body are going to be the same because the root of that body is the conception. And as an astrologer, we know that there's actually even a way to find from the birth chart what was the condition at the time of conception. And knowing that, then you can pretty much determine, you know, what the person's destination is in that life. Unless they get some really strong mercy and they accept that mercy and develop their consciousness. You know, anything's possible. But certain things are more likely than others. So usually what happens is that a person does not change their basic nature during their whole life. And the energy that they were born with is pretty much the energy that manifests, you know, in their later activities throughout the whole life. So the idea of Garbhadhan Samskara is to give the child the best possible start. And then, of course, on top of that, once they come out, to train them very nicely in Vedic principles, and that way they become pure devotees. So if the world was, if the world is suffering today because there are not enough pure devotees, there are not enough self-realized souls, there are not enough authentic gurus. There's such a vacuum of spiritual instruction that there are so many nonsense gurus, or so many unqualified people acting as guru, because